Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know y'all with me, let's get it, baby, Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy, know you with me, let's get it, baby. Boys just came back from
Welcome back to another episode of the KSL.com Rockin' Royal Soccer Show. Another week in the books, another week of Big 12 play in the books, and BYU women's soccer finally picks up their first Big 12 win of the season. We'll get to that in a moment because there's a little bit of a mixed bag of results, which is not something I can say about my esteemed co-host. She's always consistent, always arrives on time. She's the first to the training pitch, last to leave. And really, I don't know what this podcast would be without her. Probably not nearly as successful as it is. You know her as former BYU women's soccer star Carla Swensen-Haslem. I know her as a close personal friend, and really the entire reason that I subscribe to ESPN Plus is to hear her voice on all of those BYU soccer broadcasts. Carla, thanks for joining me.
You're probably being a bit too generous, Sean, but I appreciate it nonetheless. Always happy to co-host the show with you, talk some soccer, talk some Big 12 soccer, and a lot has happened over this last week.
I gotta get something out of the way before we move into the BYU world, because a little bit of breaking news before we came on here. Claudia Sonorsa from the Utah Royals announced her retirement at the end of the season. Is there any truth to the rumors that you are going to replace her on the Royals roster?
Well, I have to be able to pass the Royals fitness test first, and I'm definitely not in a position to do that. So,
When was the last time you did the beep test?
I think it was my senior year of college. So it has been. It has been
been
some
about
time.
a year or two. Yeah, it's been about a year or two.
It has been some time. But the Royals definitely will miss her. I mean, she's been a great player for them and very much a stalwart in their midfield line.
Yeah, Claudia's been awesome. We wish her all the best, for real. She's been great in Utah, and whether that's back in her homeland of Spain or whatever next in her journey, we certainly wish her the best. She's been great, almost as great as Carla has been. She's too humble for her own good, guys. Don't listen to her. BYU also came off, I think, a pretty good week, although, like I mentioned, a little bit of a mixed bag. It started with a midweek match at home against West Virginia, first Big 12 home match of the season. We mentioned it a little bit when we previewed it last week. This is a quality West Virginia side, one that maybe hasn't gotten any like truly big, hard-hitting results, but the Mountaineers come into Provo and improved to 6-2-1 on the season with a 3-2 win over the Cougars. Freshman Mia Lopez scored her second goal of the season. We'll get to a little bit more of her, I think, later in this conversation. Then Hallie Dixon pulls one back at the very end. Her first goal, really inspiring, in my opinion. Her first goal since she missed the last half or so of last season following back surgery. So pretty cool right there. Good give and go connection with Ellie Walbert. I think we need to mention on that one as well. But the result is the result. The 3-2 loss, back-to-back losses for the first time this season for head coach Jennifer Rockwood's side. Back-to-back losses to start Big 12 play. It was tough. It was a tough couple of days. This team was very frustrated. They had 15 shots, only 3 of them on goal. I'm trying to do math a little bit off the top of my head, which I don't do very well. Payne Collins comes away with 3 saves, but it's not enough as the Cougs fall to the Mountaineers. What stood out to you the most, Carla, about this match? And maybe particularly, I'll tee you up a little bit, kind of the ineffectiveness in front of goal.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest issue for BYU, was just not being clinical in the attacking third. Because they did have some looks. You had mentioned the 15 shots, but they weren't very efficient with those shots. And I will say we have to give, West Virginia defense in that they kept BYU out of their box. And so that made it really difficult for BYU to get any really good looks on the frame. I guess we can't be too surprised. West Virginia came into this game as the number 1 defense in the country. They came into this game with a 0.0 goals against average. And their goalkeeper has 5, shutouts on the season. And so it is a team that is known for being one of the top defensive teams in the country. And, they don't have a ton of attacking power, or at least they didn't in the predictions of the preseason polls. Respass was the only player from the Mountaineers that made any sort of pre-conference teams. But man, those attacking players just turned it on for West Virginia. They had a few good looks and they finished them all. They all came on counterattacks. And in fact, I think of the 5 goals that, BYU has let in, the last 5 goals that BYU has let in have all come off of counterattacks. And so, that was an advantage that West Virginia took advantage of. It was something that they were able to capitalize on. And so they were able to use their strong, good defense to hold the Cougs. Now, granted, the Cougs scored 2 goals against the Mountaineers, which beat that, 0.0 goals against average. But ultimately, letting in those 3 was tough. It also hurts that when BYU equalized, that West Virginia scored 16 seconds later.
16
And I think
seconds, yeah.
I think that was incredibly deflating for the Cougars because it felt like after that they were always just chasing. And so those were kind of my observations of the game, that West Virginia has a good defense. They brought a good defense. And ultimately BYU gave up the counterattack 3 times. West Virginia hasn't been known for scoring a lot of goals, but they were efficient on the counter. They were able to put them away. And I think that was the focus. I know that was the focus. And speaking with Coach Rockwood and her squad following the West Virginia loss, the focus was, how do we get better in front of goal? How do we shoot? And for 3 days, that's all they practiced was shooting and offensive power. And they didn't do anything else. And it paid off because then they got to Cincinnati and they were able to put 3 away.
That, friends, is what we call in the business a transition. That's why Carla Swensen-Haslem is a true professional, way more of a broadcasting professional than myself, because a couple nights later, BYU gets off the schneid a little bit, gets off of the winless run in Big 12 play with a pretty thorough and, dare I say, dominating win against Cincinnati, 3-0 on the night. Mia Lopez gets the first brace of her freshman campaign in that one, and then McKenzie Vance steps up to the penalty spot and converts her first goal of the season. Really a great moment for Vance, and I want to get to her in a quick minute. But first, let's start with Mia, who has stepped in, I think, to a really big spot, maybe seeing a little bit more hit and miss time early in the season, but now because of injuries and absences and that sort of thing, she's seeing a little bit more on the ball. And really, I think even beyond the goals against the Bearcats, I feel like Mia's been one of the players the last couple of games who's kind of starting to come into her own in some ways, right?
Yeah, so good. So good. I joked on the broadcast. I called it with, my good friend Jerem Jordan. And I joked with him on the broadcast that I thought that West Virginia was perhaps Mia Lopez's best game. Even though they lost and didn't get the result that they had wanted, I thought that Lopez played very, very well and very solid, and obviously got the goal to equalize in the second half. But about halfway through the Cincinnati game, 3 days later, I told Jerem that I was wrong, that this has been her best game, that Cincinnati has been her best game. And I feel like that's been a trend for her, and she's just getting better and better. She came in, with a lot of high hopes from the coaching staff, and I was kind of open to like, okay, let's see what you can do. And she has pleasantly stepped up and risen to the occasion, risen to the hype. And I think she's just playing better and better. She's a very mature player. She has great foot skills. She's just like very level-headed. And so I think she's been playing great. And I think the brace was very well deserving. There were 2 very different goals. The first one seemed like a mirror to that of the West Virginia game, in that she got the ball, a good first touch on top of the moon, and then from there was able to rip it up to the far post and put it away. And I mean, it was awesome. Opened things up early for the Cougars. They've had a hard time scoring first and scoring early, as is one of their mantras. And so that was good for them to be able to get that early. And then her second goal was an opportunistic goal where the ball was bouncing around, and she was able to head it towards the goal. Miller was able to kind of get a hand on it. It kind of bounced around and found the back of the net. So a bit more opportunistic, but a goal is a goal is a goal. And you give Mia Lopez credit for being in the right place at the right time when the ball is bouncing around the box.
Yeah, we talked a little bit from that West Virginia match about sort of the inefficiencies of that BYU women's soccer attack. And in two games on the season, Mia Lopez was kind of the opposite of that, the opposite of inefficiency. She was really good, really not just really good, but really clinical in front of goal. First on the 73 minutes, even against that she played against West Virginia, and then she played just over an hour against Cincinnati. Not only 3 goals on the week, but 3 goals on 3 shots on target. She took 8 shots overall. All 3 of her shots on target found the back of the net. What kind of a confidence does that give it, in particular, a young striker like her, when you're somebody who's trying to adapt to the college game and you get into position, and when you find that right shot, you let it rip and it goes in the back of the net? What kind of confidence does that give, Carla?
Yeah, no, I think it's great, especially early on in conference play. BYU is going to, if they want to make a deep run into their conference tournament, and then obviously if they want to make an argument for the NCAA tournament, they're going to have to win out. They're going to have to win the remainder of their games because they lost the first 2. And so for Mia Lopez, that's good. It's a good confidence builder to be able to have those 3 goals in a number of days, because the team's going to need her to be confident and to take chances for the remainder of the season. BYU right now has to have confident players. And so, fortunately for them, Lopez right now is riding a high. They can ride that as long as they would like, and, can use that to their advantage and see if they can't get a few more goals, especially, as they continue conference play.
I want to move to the other goal scorer as well, because we should shout out Mackenzie Vance. And I want to shout out Mackenzie not only for her play, but just on a personal level. She's been one of my favorite players to come, one of my favorite people to come through this BYU women's soccer program the last couple of years, just because of her story. And she's a Bluffton, South Carolina native, moved to the other side of the country to go to UCLA for college. And was starting to come into her own for a minute at UCLA, and then kind of backslid a little bit, got injured while she was over there, winds up transferring to BYU. And she had this incredible year just last season, in a very different year, I think, than what she expected. One of her close friends, Ellie Walbert, was out for the season. She became kind of a focal point of the attack. 7 goals, 1 assist in 21 games, all starts last year. And then she starts this year. She picks up an offseason knock, and she started this year on the bench. She was injured, finally came back the last couple of games, and she scores her first goal of the season against Cincinnati from the penalty spot. You were there, Carla. You called the entire thing. Was there ever any doubt that if Mackenzie Vance would take that penalty spot, and how important, or how, let's not even go about how important, how heartwarming kind of was that moment, seeing her get rewarded on the score sheet for what Mackenzie Vance, I think, has been for this team for the last 2 years, really?
Yeah, I think it's great for her. And I was happy that she took it. I didn't know if, the team would have Ellie Walbrook take it because she is the team's designated set piece taker. But I always love, this is just personal, this is just book of Carla. I always love when the person who gets taken out is the one who gets to take the penalty kick. That's how I feel it should be.
You kind of earn it a little bit more, right?
Yeah, I mean, she got absolutely taken out in the box, like just knee to knee, no play on the ball. And so I personally always love when the person who gets taken out is the one who gets to take the penalty kick, especially if they want to take it. And you could tell Mackenzie Vance wanted to take it, as she was the one that grabbed the ball and took it to the spot. And so I was happy to see that she was able to take it. And you're right, she's worked hard this season. I thought she's played very well. I've also been impressed with, her play and her story. And so it was good to see her, put it to the spot and put it away. Miller, goalkeeper for Cincinnati, guessed wrong, and I think that helped a little bit because Vance's shot was relatively middle. But again, a goal is a goal. If you put it away, if the goalkeeper guesses wrong, it finds the back of the net, and you could tell she very much felt that relief to see a goal on the score sheet. And that was the one that put it away for the Cougs. When it's 2-0, that's a good hill to be on. But it only takes one to make it a really close game. But that third one really puts it away and is the security goal. And so I think everyone at BYU kind of breathed a sigh of relief, including Mackenzie Vance, to be able to get on the score sheet.
Yeah, kind of put the proverbial nail in the coffin in a lot of ways, I think, that goal and that one from the penalty spot. And it didn't seem like it was a very controversial pick to move Mackenzie into that penalty role, which I think just speaks to kind of her presence and her role, her maturity on the team, where this is a very young team, and she's a very seasoned veteran player. I think there's a lot of respect for her. So if there was kind of some movement as to who would take that penalty, I don't think there was any controversy whatsoever.
No, I think it was a good decision.
Yeah.
If I was the coach, I would have let Mackenzie Vance take it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're following one of the number one rules of the Book of Carla, which is, that's the golden rule in soccer as far as I'm concerned.
I was a forward that got taken out a lot. So for me, I wanted to take the penalty kick every time I got taken out.
That's fair. That's fair. So maybe you're a little bit biased in that regard.
Very biased.
Yeah. BYU after 2 straight home matches. We'll just wrap up on this 3 straight away matches. It starts this Thursday, October 2nd. 6 p.m. Mountain Time is the kickoff on ESPN Plus at Houston, and then Monday at Oklahoma State, Friday at Baylor before they are back home on Southfield Thursday, October 16th against the University of Arizona. You can hear all of those matches from my co-host Carla Swensen-Haslem over there on ESPN Plus with I think you've had roughly like 6 different broadcast partners during your time just because of scheduling and that kind of thing. Normally it's Greg Rubel. Shout out Greg, friend of the pod, close personal friend of both of us. He gets a little bit busy this time of the year, double dipping between football and women's soccer. And so obviously you heard Jerem Jordan with her the other day on Saturday. Landon Southwick has subbed in every now and then. Spencer Linton has subbed in every now and then. We love all of those subs. Greg holds a special place in our hearts. So that's why we roast him and give him a little bit of that credence. But Carla, let's get out of here just real quick on this. What's the number one thing you think BYU needs to do in going to H-Town to come away with a win at Houston?
Yeah, I think I'll repeat their advice. You asked me this last week regarding West Virginia, and I think it's remained the same. BYU has to score early. BYU should beat Houston, but if they allow the game to go 0-0 for 75, 80 minutes, you keep Houston in it. You give Houston 1 or 2 counterattacks, and they find themselves up 1-0, 2-0, 2-1. You don't want that. BYU has to score early, and if we're going to add to that, they have to stop the counter.
Yeah, and they got a lot of practice with that against West Virginia. We'll see how much it pays off. I think this is a Houston team that they haven't gotten a ton of results on the year, but they've gotten enough. And the ones that they have, they've been very efficient on the counter. So I think it'll be a good test, especially on the road down in the Bayou City for this BYU team. We'll be back here next week wrapping it all up. As always, check us out at Rock and Royal Pod on YouTube, Rock and Royal Pod on Instagram. You can also find us Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever else you listen to pods. For my co-host, Carla Swensen-Haslem, catch her on the ESPN Plus broadcast and follow her on LinkedIn. She's writing on LinkedIn right now, which, again, I didn't know was a thing, and now I'm a little bit obsessed with it. I'm not going to lie. So I'm Sean Walker from KSL.com saying so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Keep us working, yeah, we never lazy. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Cougars who they want now. Red is upstate, and we don't do no uptown. Had them singing like a flute. We don't play around with no oots. Or them Aggies up in Ogden, they not rocking how we rocking. Rockin' Navy, rockin' Royal, rock your hands. Rockabye babies, rock the stands with the fans. If you with us, raise your hands. Rockabye baby, rockin' Navy. Shout out to my teams, wives and babies. Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy. Know you with me. Let's get it, baby. Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy. Know you with me. Let's get it, baby. We going long like a cougar tail. Defense hitting hard like some seashells.